Ladies and gentlemen, the panel discussion is going to begin. The panel discussion is hosted by Research Fellow Lin Qinglong from Research Center for Translation, Compilation, and Language Education at National Academy for Educational Research. Now we solemnly introduce the panelists in order of the sessions. Professor Tono from Graduate School of Global Studies at Tokyo University of Foreign Studies. Vice Rector Wen from Huy University of Foreign Languages and International Studies. Assistant Professor SAVSKI from Department of Foreign Languages at Prince of Songhua University. Professor and Director Lee from the Institute of Hispanic Studies, Korea University. Deputy CEO Wu Hui from the Language Training and Testing Center. Now we leave time to Research Fellow Lee.
好，大家好。我们从谈7月半的在地实践，那在地实践以后，可以看看各国教育的情形。所以我们今天有3个主题。第一个主题是大家应该蛮有兴趣的去了解一下，就是有关各个国家有关英语教学的现况。例如那个学生从哪一个年级开始学习及每周学习的时间，还有家长对小孩英语文学习的重视情况，还有教师教学及学生学习所遭遇的困难和挑战，这就是从经验来看。第二个主题是有关各国中小学英语文教学依据的能力标准是什么？那是在地化发展到导入国际语言能力的标准。那有曾经遭遇到哪些问题挑战？那如何克服？那第3个主题是导入国际英语文能力标准对各国英语文教学学习评量重要性为何？另外一个是在 AI 时代，将来可能进一步应用到哪些层面？所以就是主要是从早上4位讲者的讲去扩充，看大家交换一些相关的经验。那我们就先邀请副校长来谈这3个相关的主题。我们欢迎副校长。
Yes. So thank you for this panel discussion. I think that it's very interesting for me to listen to different presentations related to the CFR from scholars around the different countries in Asia, including and I see there is a kind of very strong interest in the CFR in the context of Asia and Southeast Asia. So related to the question raised in the discussion, there are 3 topics. I think I would like to provide some information related to the 3 questions that you have raised. In Vietnam, related to the first one, the first topic, the situation of English teaching in primary and secondary schools in Vietnam. I think we are moving towards making English becoming more and more important, and I hope that there will be more stronger policies to make English become the second language in the Vietnam teaching context, which means basically we are targeting using English as a language, as a medium of instruction in schools at all levels. So that's the ambition. But right now, we allocate about 1,155 contact hours for 3 levels at the primary, lower secondary, upper secondary English language teachings. By the way, 1 contact hour is it is equivalent to about 45 to 50 minutes class hour. So in total, it's about more than 1,100 classroom hour for teaching English. We hope that the amount of teaching hour, contact hours in classroom will be increased, but due to the constraints of the curriculum, we cannot, allow more a higher amount of time for that, and this is what we call a new English curriculum in Vietnam. We call that the 2018 English language curriculum, where a lot of changes, a lot of reform has been made. And one of the things is we try to incorporate the can-do statements from the CFR in describing the outcomes of these levels in terms of English proficiency. So the students are expected to reach a certain level. For example, for primary would be A1, for lower secondary students it would be A2, and for high school it would be B1. So that the expected outcomes, before we don't have that, before the new curriculum, we don't have the expected outcome based on the CFR can-do statements. That could be considered as one of the significant changes that we made in terms of curriculum design. And about the concern and the attention to the English language education in Vietnam, we see the attention and parental involvement, the involvement from parents in English language teaching. Parents in Vietnam generally believe that English, a better proficiency English will bring about more chances, more opportunities for well-paid jobs or good salary. So they invest a lot both in English, formal English language education in the classroom, as well as the informal tutoring in some language centers outside of the classroom. Do we have any difficulties and challenges in terms of teaching? Yes, in general, in Vietnam, the challenges for the teachers, there are many, but I think from my perspective, when carry out this CFR-based proficiency outcomes, we have challenges in terms of materials, resources. So especially what we call CFR-aligned materials. So it's easy for publisher to say this is a CFR-aligned materials, but it's hard to validate that kind of claims. And maybe they suffer more challenges related to classroom size or professional development opportunities, especially in relation to the CFR philosophy and the CFR approaches towards teaching and assessment. For learners, I think the challenges for them is the lack of exposure. We consider this as one of the significant challenging obstacles for learners in EFL setting like Vietnam, because basically they don't have the chances to practice English in an authentic environment. So the lack of exposure to the language is one of the greatest barriers towards higher proficiencies in English language. So those are some of the initial thoughts of the first topic. I hope that I can give right now. I don't know if I have to stop and wait for other people to share or not.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, well, I mean, in general, the principle in Thailand is that there is an overwhelming focus on English in language education in general. It's interesting hearing the number of hours that were just mentioned from Japan and Vietnam. In Thailand, it used to be 1 hour period starting from primary grade 1. This was upgraded to 5 hours per week for grades 1 to 3 at some point in the last, I think, 8 or so years. at least that's the most recent information I have. I don't know whether that's been pulled back or not. It was at that time quite a great pressure, of course, on the teaching staff because there is already a kind of lack. But that sort of, let's say, underlines the discourse around English in Thailand, which is very much one of, you can call it English fever. Yeah, that everyone must have English as much as possible. The hours do then drop, but the English remains, as I said in my presentation, compulsory even through tertiary level. So even at, for example, at my university, when the students come in, they will have to take a certain number of hours per week in the first and second year of English. Yeah. And of course, then this is only now at some universities, the system is changing where English is becoming fully elective. Yeah. But those are, I think the only university I know is one of the bigger universities in Bangkok, where I guess the perception is that they can afford to make it elective because the students already come in with quite a high proficiency. Yeah. Aside from that, another area where you can really see this happening or the importance of English growing is, and I briefly touch upon this in the presentation, but it's worth explaining a bit more, is the spread of CLIL, so content language integrated learning, and English medium instruction, especially at secondary and even at primary level. If you have enough money, basically, you can now choose, I'm pretty sure in most regions of Thailand, some kind of degree of bilingual education. My daughter, for example, goes to a bilingual school, but of course, in her case, she uses English and Thai at home, so that's perfect for her. Most of her classmates don't. So, of course, for them, they are getting an education in two languages, one of which they only use at school. And that's already, and this is still pre-primary level, yeah? But that is spreading. It used to be, at the very beginning, English medium instruction was very much just an elite phenomenon only for the very wealthiest. It's really now becoming accessible where even public schools or sort of private schools are opening English medium programs for additional cost, of course, in sort of non-elite areas. Hat Yai, for example, would be a place like that. We're not a relatively big city, but not one of those affluent, globalized cities like Bangkok or Phuket or Chiang Mai. Yeah. So, but even here, there are several international schools, several public or other type of schools that are offering English medium programs. And of course, in this is where, parental expectations come in, since you ask about that, which is clearly right. People are seeing, parents are seeing kind of sense in sacrificing quite a great amount of their income for their children's English education. Yeah. And of course, here we also get into shadow education, so tutoring. That's also very, very much important now in the Thai education scene. Indeed, I could say that out of our undergraduate students at Faculty of Liberal Arts, probably more of them who end up in teaching desire to be, let's say, entrepreneurial teachers who have their own micro language school rather than working at a school, traditionally as, a government school or even a private school as traditional teachers. Of course, what difficulties? Well, the difficulty seems to be that it doesn't work. In the end, that if the majority of universities cannot achieve anywhere near the goal that has been that was set for university graduation, which is B1 in English, yeah, then it tells you that all of these hours, all of these resources that are being pulled into English aren't really working. And as I said in my presentation, there are practical issues with this. Large classes, that is, I think we're still underestimating. Having experience teaching in, English conversation classes for 50 students, for example, I think we still underestimate just what an impact that has on what we can actually do and the kind of environment that it creates in the classroom. But beyond that, I think, it's in the end a sociolinguistic issue that simply English is not present enough in the context to justify the goals that are being set. From a European perspective, in Slovenia, I forget what it is, but it's 60 or 70% of people say that they are fluent in English. But we are fluent in English because all of our TV or most of our TV is in English, because English for us is a language of mobility. Slovenian is a language of 1.8 million speakers, which you cannot use as a lingua franca with barely anyone. There is a quite great demand, and culturally the context is quite different in Thailand. So let's say the end result is big extremes. Yeah. You might have extremely proficient students coming out of bilingual education, usually because they have the resources to do that, but you might have very low proficiency students who come out of many, many hours of English, but basically come to university and start again from A1. What is your name? What is your favorite color? And that kind of thing, which, as a reflection must be incredibly frustrating for them as an experience. Yeah. So that is kind of just to give a general picture. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor SAVSKI. Please welcome Professor Lee from Korea.
Hello. Yes. First question. Briefly describe the current situation of English language teaching in primary and secondary schools in your country. Teaching English in primary and secondary school in Korea is so important because English is the international language and is lingua franca. Korean economy depends so much on their exportation. If we cannot export, our country will collapse. So the English education is so important. It's the essential. Many people think it's the essential part of the education. So the problem is rich people who have money, they send their children to the kindergarten where teachers are native English speakers, and the tuition is extremely high, and they begin bilingual educations during their early age. So we call it English divide. If you have money, you can send your children to English kindergarten, and you can start bilingual English education since you are a kid. But if you don't have money, you cannot do that, and the proficiency, they will have low proficiency of English. So in case of primary school in Korea, in primary schools in Korea, English education officially starts from the 3rd grade. But many Koreans see that the English education offered in the primary school is not enough. So many Koreans send their children to the private academy called Hagwon, making their children learn English. So people like me who receive the traditional English education, we don't have native English accent. But the younger students nowadays, if I go to the West, so many students have excellent English skills. And in middle school and high school, they still learn English and still they prepare the TOEFL to get the admission from the top universities. Even they study for the AP, and even some students study for the SAT to get admission of the international studies of the top universities. So English education is so important, but the problem is it costs a lot of money. It depends only on their social class. Second question, what are the proficiency standards based on for English language teaching in your country? Proficiency standard. If you want to get the job, you want to work in the global countries, global companies like Samsung or LG or Hyundai, your proficiency of English should be excellent. They already require the high proficiency of English because they are global countries. So in Korea, there is no in between. We have to speak excellent English. If not, you cannot work in global companies. And are they developed locally or aligned with the international language proficiency standard? Well, yes, indeed, in Korea, we aligned with the international language proficiency standard, especially American standard. In Korea, ACTFL, the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages, and ETS, Education Teaching Service, their guidelines are so important, especially ETS, Education Teaching Service of United States, since they develop, administers, and scores of TOEFL and TOEIC, and since the scores of TOEFL, the submission of TOEFL scores and TOEIC scores are so important to get a better job. Yes, we align with the American language proficiency standard. What problems and challenges have been encountered? Yeah, social conflict. Many Koreans think it's not fair because the proficiency of English not depend on the personal training and personal discipline, but it depends on the family wealth. So it caused certain tension in Korea, and whenever we change the government, new president want to change the system, but every time they try to change the system, every time they fail. And another thing is that to offer the equal opportunities to learn English, Korean government offers guest English teacher program called the GETS. Many schools, particularly in rural areas, government send English native teachers through English teacher program to the rural areas. Make students from the rural area learn English. But many Koreans still think it's not enough. And private education, called 학원 in Korea, is the key to understand English education in Korea. Number 3, what is the importance of integrating international English language proficiency standard into English language teaching, learning, and searching in your country in the age of AI? I think I already answered the question. Of course, in the age of AI, now we are using AI skills to develop the language learning and to solve the problem that for family can learn English through program developed based on AI. So many people think AI can create personalized learning plans. And now many companies trying to develop AI tutoring systems. And so many people now think AI can be used for equality, and many people can learn English by AI, but still we have to develop. We are in the early stage of developing this plan. And in my case, I learned Japanese. I began to start to learn Japanese using Duolingo. So every day I practice Japanese using AI-based app called Duolingo. So I think AI can be very useful learning foreign language. Yeah, this is the end of my discussion.
Thank you, Professor Lee. Let's welcome Deputy CEO Wu.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to share my reflections on the use of CEFR today. And based on my experience at the LTTC, I'd like to discuss two key aspects from an institutional perspective, which I believe will address topic 3 of this panel. Here are the two aspects I'd like to focus on. First, the significance and impact of the CEFR on our institution's testing practices and research. And second, the applications of the CEFR in the context of AI advancement. All right, the first aspect, as we all know that the CEFR was introduced in Taiwan in 2005 when the Ministry of Education adopted to establish a common English standard, English proficiency standard. and the standards require students, teachers of English, and civil servants to meet specific CEFR levels through external English exams. And additionally, test providers like us were mandated to align their examination with the CEFR levels, ensuring consistency across the board. And the CEFR has been influential in Taiwan, as shown in the table. Recognized tests include international ones like TOEIC, IELTS, as well as the local tests like the GEPT from the LTTC. And this highlights the link between LTTC and CEFR. And at the LTTC, we place great importance on the policy requiring test alignment, which has indeed influenced the practices for our test, particularly the GEPT and BEST-STEP. Aligning with the CEFR has elevated the quality of our tests and expanded their recognition both locally and globally. Moreover, in recent years, AI has refined our scoring reporting practice and enable us to provide personalized CEFR-aligned feedback to learners. I will give you more details about the applications of AI shortly. Let me provide a brief introduction to the two tests I just mentioned, GEPT and BEST-STEP, both of which were developed by LTTC and have gained widespread recognition in Taiwan. As shown in this table, the GEPT was launched in year 2000 to support lifelong learning, while the BEST-STEP, introduced just last year, align with Taiwan's bilingual policy for higher education, and both tests are aligned with the CEFR. On test alignment, we have conducted extensive studies over the years to demonstrate the criterion validity of these two tests. In other words, we have used the CEFR as an external benchmark for comparison. Aligning with an international standard is crucial for local tests like the GEPT and BEST-STEP, as it may enhance their quality. And the picture here presents a list of our CEFR linking studies. Some of the studies were conducted by LTTC independently, and some were by our collaboration with international researchers. The efforts put into comparing our tests to the CEFR have also enhanced our research capability. You're welcome to check out the research report through the link I provided on the slide. Originally, the GEPT was aligned with our local curriculum during its development. However, through the CEFR GEPT alignment, the GEPT level can now also be interpreted in terms of the CEFR levels. The images here display the linkage between BEST-STEP scores and CEFR levels. The CEFR linking study for GEPT and BEST-STEP were conducted by following the methodologies and procedures recommended in a manual published by the Council of Europe. The procedures include familiarization, specification, standardization, and validations. And also, to enhance objectiveness, a twin panel approach was adopted involving judges from both internal and external research teams. This slide illustrates how we've leveraged the CEFR to help our stakeholders better understand and interpret our test scores. This is particularly useful for those who need to see, for example, how GEPT score corresponds to IELTS score or TOEFL scores in terms of CEFR levels. The information like this is greatly needed by those who are considering Taiwanese students' applications for admissions to foreign universities. All right, next, I'd like to focus on how we apply the CEFR in providing feedback to learners through the use of AI technologies. One example of this is Dr. GEPT, an enhanced score reporting service we launched in 2021. After receiving their score reports, learners can scan the QR code to access the service, which provides their scores, the corresponding CEFR level, and individualized feedback designed to support self-directed learning. And this feedback is also aligned with CEFR levels, ensuring it is both relevant and actionable. Currently, Dr. GPT provides personalized feedback on listening and reading after learners complete the GPT test. However, with the launch of GPT iPrep later this year, the feedback will be expanded to cover speaking and writing as well. While Dr. GPT was developed entirely by LTTC, iPrep is a collaborative effort involving teams from linguistics, computer engineering, AI, and platform design, with strong support from government agencies backing Taiwan's bilingual policy. In summary, implementing the CEFR in a local context presents challenges, such as communicating with stakeholders and aligning with curriculum and assessment. However, by enhancing teachers' and learners' understanding of CEFR and making thoughtful adaptation, we may transform these challenges into opportunities, fostering a more effective and cohesive educational environment. Finally, the key is to use the CEFR or similar framework, CFRT for example, as a tool to create a circular ecosystem that closely integrates learning, teaching, and assessment. Thank you.
Thank you. So I will give some about the topic 1. Okay, this is for the topic 1. The weekly 1 hours for English language learning in our program guides or the 12-year basic education. For the elementary school, in the elementary we have 3 learning stages, and for the second learning stage, that's grade 3 and 4, 1 period per week. 1 period is about 40 minutes. About 40 minutes in Taiwan. And in the third stage, that's grade 5 and 6, 2 periods per week. That's our curriculum map. And for junior high school is our 4th learning stage. That's grade 7 to 9. So 3 periods per week. That's for the junior high school. And for the senior high school, that's the 5th learning stage. So that's grade 10 to 12. So 18 required credits and 6 elective credits. So in high school, we use credits to describe the learning hours. And for the grades 10 and 11, that's 4 required credits per semester. That's about 4 periods per week. And grade 12, that's the first semester, that's 2 required credits. But we also have some elective credits. So the current situation of English education in Taiwan, I think that's very similar to Japan, Korea, or Thailand, or Vietnam. According to the 12 years basic education curriculum, English class starts in the 3rd grade. As I show, that's the PPT. However, in 6 special municipalities, Keelung and Hsinchu, they now begin in post grade, say in grade 1. So a lot of county that's started from the cities. The curriculum, along with the bilingual 2030 policy, aims to increase English instruction at the earlier stage with more English medium teaching in public schools. So that's against our English education. But despite this, over 60% of parents feel that school English classes are insufficient, and most arrange after-school English tutoring for their children. I think that's very similar for the Monsoon Asia countries. All parents are pay very more attention to their children's English education. So according to the MOE, that's the Ministry of Education, nearly 203,000 students received remedial English education in the 2019 and the 2020 academic years. In 2020, 74% of junior high students score poorly in English. So that's different level. The MSAT distribution showing a wide gap in English proficiency, listed in both urban and rural junior high schools, including Taipei. That means the two peak. Some is very excellent, but some user English still need to attend it. So that's the MSAT situation. That's the difficult we face because the students' English proficiency is so different, and that will be challenging to teach or to compare textbook because that's impossible for textbook to fit with two levels. So the gap persists in high schools, except for a few higher institutions. So that's the student English proficiency has MSAT. So a survey funded by Educational Testing Service, ETS, and conducted by Sixin University found that nearly 40% of parents are actively involved in their children's English education, with 42% starting English instruction before elementary school and dedicated about 6.3 hours per week. Because the parents is pay attention to their children's education. So even they start to the elementary school, they start to learn English in kindergarten. The survey results also reflect parental anxiety. 64% of parents believe that schools' English education is insufficient. That's just what started from grade 3 and grade 4. Lots of parents believe that that's not learn English. And 65.2% of parents arrange for their children to attend tutoring or other school programs for English. I think that's the same for other countries. That parents pay more attention to their children's English education. And nearly 50% of parents think that learning English in this program is the most beneficial. They think the cram school or tutoring is more effective than in the school. And when asked about their expectation for their children's English learning, the most common response was internationalization and future employment and domestic higher education. I think that's all the same, the same tendency, like Japan or Korea, Ireland or Vietnam. Okay, that's the end of the presentation, and we deep dive to Q&A. Any questions? Or the panelists that has questions, ask each other and ask. Okay, now first one. Given the challenges of applying the CER in a local context, what initial steps should be prioritized for successful implementation, whether at the national or classroom level? For example, should the focus on reducing class size or more community-ized teachers is the framework? Our panelists who will answer this question.
Can I say something?
Okay.
To respond to this question, I think that the CFR, applying the CFR in a local context, communicating with stakeholders is very important, of course. And we can identify stakeholders, including policymakers, teachers, and students, and parents. Since then, most of the panelists have mentioned how parents care about this students' learning. So I think the communication of with stakeholders is very important. For example, when in 2005, when the Ministry of Education decided to adopt CEFR, and of course this news struck parents. They were so anxious. They thought that the CEFR is another standardized test. So they called the LTTC, say, I want my kids to register for CEFR test. And we said, no, CEFR is not a test. So I think it's very important to let the parents, if we think parents play a very important role in influencing our students' learning, learners' learning, then I think that we need to do something to communicate, to let parents know what is CFR, what it can do, and what's the relationship between CFR and their learning, and then also the testing. That's some of my points that I'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you. To please hear all. And evening, so patients, my question concerns the issue of global English. As English expressed and evolves across different regions, naturally, many localized variants emerge. For second language learners, should we aim for one or two fixed standards, such as British or American accents? Or should we acknowledge the existence of various English variants and adopt a more open approach in terms of English native teacher hiring, technology, and assessment? So, any answers? Okay. Dr. SAVSKI.
Yes, thank you. This is a very interesting question, yeah. And I mean, I think that not only we should, but we have to nowadays. Yeah, the reality that we have in Asia is that we have very different types of English being used here. Let's say there is a movement, a kind of evolving scholarly movement now to try and articulate what kind of language teaching this would be. But there are a couple of sort of different bodies of literature, people looking at teaching English as an international language, people looking at global English as language teaching. Then there, let's say, a couple of different focuses. The very basis for everything seems to be to teach awareness. And this is, we can really, I think, connect this to the CFR in the sense that, CFR is talking about plurilingual awareness. And that's probably where, in our case, plurilingualism would mean multiple Englishes. Yeah. But of course, CFR itself doesn't talk about Englishes. Yeah. The CFR vision is still very much about, I think, standard languages. Yeah, as the kind of target of learning, and that's probably the place where where our sort of interpretation there's a lot of pressure on us to reinterpret in some way. So definitely, and of course, yes, I definitely agree with I think what Yiming is suggesting here, which is that we then have to also think about hiring policy. Yeah. This obsession with native speaker teachers, which often is connected really to financial interests. Yeah, that there are people who run schools who can make big profits off of advertising their programs as native speaker run. Yeah. And that's a big challenge for us. So I definitely think that there is a scope here for, a use of CFR which goes with global Englishes or English as an international language in a compatible direction. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Professor SAVSKI. And Professor Lee, from your experience,
yes, we used to have the traditional view about toward the English education, but in last 10 or 20 years, after the 21st century, we began to change our vision toward English education due to the free trade agreement with so many countries. So English education became so important, and we offered options for the college admission. Before, you don't only had to submit the SAT scores, but in last decade, after 21st century, students could choose the EPP between the submission of the SAT scores for English or the submission of TOEFL scores instead of English scores of CSAT. And it helps a lot the improvement of English skills of many Korean students. And they began to learn English under bilingual education circumstances. But however, as I told you before, in 2019, there was also political corruption, big, huge scandal. And then after that, Korean government banned the submission of TOEFL scores in the college admission process. But still, some universities like mine and Yonsei University still accept TOEFL scores just in case for the schools where all the classes are only taught in English. But the problem is we are always in between two extremes. Traditional education based on the fairness and bilingual education based on the family welfare. So always there are two extremes. So if we put importance on the English proficiency skills, we have to put less importance on CSAT examination. It was just a fact before, but after 2019, once again, the score of CSAT is important, and I think students now begin to put more importance on reading and listening instead of speaking and writing. So we are going backwards after 2019, after the political scandal. But it can be changed in the next government because in Korea, everything changes so quickly. We reform everything constantly in every 5 years, in every 3 years. So we Koreans don't like following the tradition. So who knows what will happen in 2 or 3 years or within 5 years. So English education policy is changing constantly, depend on the political situation in Korea. In Korea, education are related so much onto the political situation too.
Thank you, Professor Lee. And Deputy CEO, do you want to give some answers?
It's okay. We have another question.
Oh, another question. Okay. The question for the panelists: what do you think Taiwan needs to prioritize for their goal of bilingual nation by 2030? Based on the macro and the micro challenges faced in your countries, GLR development, what recommendations do you have for Taiwan?
I want to, and I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way. I do want to put on record that I have issue with idea of bilingual policy to begin with, because I think every society is more than bilingual. But putting that aside, I think that in the end there are more languages than just 2 in any country that do matter. But putting that aside, I mean, if I could give advice to the whole country, I would say think of a way that this can be seen not as a goal, but maybe as an aspiration. Because the danger of setting that as a goal when it comes to English, is unless it's possible to achieve it, there is then a danger of going into this negative spiral where the results are never good enough, and the policy continues to there's this perceived failure, right? And there is this constant panic among all stakeholders, among politicians who think that they have to do something, and then you have this rapid succession of policies, parents who think that they have to find new that they need to do something extra, and more weekend classes, more of this, more of that. That there's a dangerous path to go there. So that would maybe be that there's a narrative. If it's seen in the narrative as, okay, we aspire to this, right, and sort of we'll do what we can to try and go toward that direction, then that's fine. But going toward it as we must by this year have, bilingualism, then you risk ending up in a situation where, half of the people who graduate high school would be failure, or even more than half. Then that's a quite problematic narrative, because it means that, and this is going back to what Prof. Lee was saying in Korea, you end up with this deficit where you have, some who are constantly below what the expectation is. Maybe that would be so thinking about the narrative would be quite important from the perspective of what I see and also elsewhere in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, I totally agree with the opinion of Professor SAVSKI. That's the problem, not only in Korea. I think same thing happening in Japan and Taiwan and China. I think so.
Okay. Thank you, all panelists. Yes. Next question from MEC. The question is, I don't need to complicate the issue, but given the difficulties in implementing the CER, should we consider creating a simpler framework instead focus on English as a lingua franca, specifically for the Asia context, such as Pan Asia ELF framework or something like that? Thank you. So our panelists will answer first.
It's a very interesting idea. I think it would involve, lots of complexities in even that we try to create an Asian Pacific, framework. And even the framework is developed, I think it's when you try to implement any framework in a context, it's complicated. And I know it's interesting since that, Professor Tono has developed CFRJ, and I know the CFRT project is going on in Taiwan is actually, relying on lots of experience from CFRJ. So I guess that there will be lots of similarities and amount of between different, framework developed in different countries. So when there are more framework like this be developed, I think that we can we continue discussing, how to collaborate or exchange. And then maybe in the future, there will be so-called a Pan-Asia framework. I don't know, but it takes time. But it's an interesting idea. Yeah, worthy for, looking into. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. You please be all who other panelists have any opinion or have any suggestions about these questions. Okay.
I would agree, that maybe creating a separate framework isn't the way to go. Like, my sense is doing a kind of companion guideline, how to implement CFR and promote this, right? That's probably the way to go, because in the end it's just a question of, bridging the gap between what is in the CFR and, for example, a curriculum developer who wants to promote, diversity through English, who wants to promote maybe also, a vision of pluriculturalism that suits kind of global citizenship in Asia, right? So having, maybe just a set of guidelines, it can be a very short document, just saying, when it says, this, right, this can mean, right, ABC, and then just helping to interpret. Maybe that would be the way to go. And that's it's something that we don't need a huge multinational project to do. It can be quite a localized thing that can be started somewhere.
Okay, thank you, Professor SAVSKI. And remember, Professor Lee has strong question to ask, right?
Yeah, but I can pass my questions. I just had the simple questions. I wanted to ask, what is the current situation of the education, secondary foreign language education? I mean, other than English. The Department of French and German and Russian are disappearing. Probably same thing is happening in Taiwan and Japan and in Vietnam. I don't know. I just had a simple question about it.
Thank you, Professor Lee. And how about Thailand, Professor SAVSKI?
Yeah, well, definitely there's been this overall push toward English. Yeah, so the other languages are kind of marginalized to some extent. Actually, the curriculum at the moment actually doesn't say English specifically; it says foreign languages. But then, in reality, almost all of that would be devoted to English. There are, I would argue that culturally, probably Korean and Japanese and Chinese are actually probably more, authentic as languages to focus on, because of K-pop, because of the cultural influence. In the end, there's a lot of potential there. And a lot of kind of let's say self-directed or whatever out of classroom learning, that kind of thing. But that's still on let's say, at an early stage. From the south of Thailand perspective, big surprise here is that there is very little interest in learning Malay, learning Indonesian. And considering that we're just across the border, that we have Malay-speaking community in southern Thailand, that's a very marginalized community. So there's still, I guess, maybe a lack of kind of, if we're talking about ASEAN as a community, and there's not really this emerging idea yet of we should learn each other's languages. Yeah. And that's still a long way to go to that, I guess.
Okay, thank you, Professor SAVSKI. And the future CEO, we want to...
Okay, yeah, the situation in Taiwan, second foreign language teaching education actually has been increasingly emphasized and encouraged by the Ministry of Education at the secondary school level. And even we developed a second foreign language proficiency test, and the scores are also mapped with the CEFR levels. So CEFR levels are used not only for English, but also for second foreign language. And not only for second foreign language, in Taiwan, we also use CEFR to define a language for ability for local language, our L1s, including our Taiwanese dialect and Hakka, and even our Mandarin Chinese test. And all of these tests are, aligned with the CEFR. Thank you.
Okay, the time for this section. So ladies and gentlemen, as we bring this discussion to a close, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to our honorable panelists and all participants for their thoughtful contributions. Today, we have had the opportunity to dive into key issues surrounding the development of English proficiency standards in the Monsoon Asia region, experience challenge and forward-looking strategies. The insight provided by our speaker from Japan, Vietnam, Thailand, South Korea, and Taiwan have given us a very valuable perspective on how to adapt and implement these standards to suit the local context while applying its global frameworks like the CEFR. We have also touched on the potential role of AI and the emerging technology in the future of English education, opening up exciting possibilities for further innovation. And I believe the knowledge shared today will help drive progress in our collective effort to improve English education across the region. Moving forward, it's clear that collaboration and the continued dialogue will be the key to overcoming challenges and advancing our goals. Thank you all once again for your participation. As we move forward, I encourage continued collaboration and dialogue. Together, we can advance English education in our region, ensuring that our students are prepared for the global future. So, thank you again. Thank you. And see all of you next time, maybe this year. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.